Alright, so another video that I am making for you guys as this little starting run for the Rhys McLaren channel. I'm going to be talking about some of the new AFL changes for the 2026 AFL season already that they're planning to jump into for next season. So, if you haven't seen already, Greg Swann, the footy boss of the AFL, has announced that they have officially scrapped the centre bounce and the substitution rule, which was heavily contentious, especially towards the end of the season, is officially being scrapped as well. So we're reverting a few things, including a very traditional thing in the centre bounce itself, which Greg Swann had also acknowledged. I can't remember the exact quote it was, but he had acknowledged that the centre bounce is a traditional thing. He wants to make it clear that he understands that some people would be a little upset with it purely because of the fact that, it's something that's been around for as long as the game has existed. He said he acknowledged the tradition of the bounce, but said the game had evolved and the benefits of removing the bounce were too big to ignore. This is from an article written by Sarah Black with AAP on the AFL.com.au website. And I'm going to take a few quotes from there as well, both from Greg Swann and the article itself. So straight from the horse's mouth, per se. And I'll give my opinion on what I think about both of them, because I think they're both positive outlooks and both positive outcomes. So hopefully, with this discussion, it'll kind of give you an idea as to the type of content you may see on this channel as we follow and cover everything AFL related here. So it would be awesome if you subscribe to the channel and kept up to date with it all. And feel free to leave your discussion and extra thoughts in the comments. But they are not going to be introducing the last disposal out of bounds rule just yet. This was also mentioned due to the fact that the AFL Commission is hoping to meet together next month to discuss whether they're going to bring it into the AFL, because they've been doing it for a few years now that I know of for the AFLW. It's still a bit of a confusing rule to me, but I think once further explained to the AFL masses, you may be able to understand it. It just keeps the ball moving, keeps more things happening, less stoppages. It also had been tested in the SANFL, so hopefully the South Australian League has gotten a look at that, and they'll decide whether it is good to see that will come back. But first with the centre bounce, because it's not contentious per se, but it's just been around forever, and it's going to be very interesting. The official reasoning that the AFL has gone into in regards to the reason they have scrapped the centre bounce is for health and safety reasons for the umpires. And it makes sense. I think a lot of people don't get that that can be a bit of a, I guess, strenuous task. It's not something that anyone is really good at from the get-go. Obviously, if you, like me when you were younger, you and your mates to mess around a bit would try and do centre bounces and see how that'd go. It's a difficult task, and so the umpires have a tough task just in learning the skill alone. It's a practice, so scrapping the bounce just means that they no longer have to worry about that, and it gives the opportunity for them to purely focus on officiating the game, which is also something that Greg Swann had mentioned. But umpire health and safety was the big reason, and it's also just comes down to physicality. You also have to physically bounce the ball. That's another thing. And small things, take up over time. You'd rather these guys be able to run out a full game without popping a shoulder out. God forbid that ever happened. I don't remember it happening, but it can be a freak accident. These guys, they're very, very fit, very healthy, but as we know, anyone at any time could experience an injury, a freak accident that involves popping a shoulder out or something that could happen with the centre bounce. It's a very rare scenario, but at the same time, less about freak accidents, I'd imagine. It's more about preserving their health and fitness over time, rather than consistently bouncing the ball over and over again. Just gets it out of the way. But yeah, the tradition of it, I'm not too worried about it. I don't imagine many people are going to be, especially because if an umpire messed up a centre bounce, you're used to it. You hear the boos around the stadium, the sarcastic boos and stuff like that. So that will no longer be a thing. So I guess there goes that tradition. The AFL taking away the things I love. But a few of the quotes that Swann had mentioned. We've got pathways and umpires coming through. We've got some fantastic decision makers in these groups, but they can't bounce the ball. So, again, it comes back to the idea of these umpires having to learn a skill that no other umpire has to learn. I guess the closest you've got that I can think of off the top of my head, I know NFL umpires, if we're talking American sports, they've got to make sure that they can place the ball at the right spot. not really a difficult skill to learn. Basketball, umpires have to throw the ball up for a jump ball and stuff like that. That is as far as that goes in terms of skill. The centre bounce is something really, really specific and really, really unique to the Australian sport. So it's something that, you don't realise is a skill. It is a genuine skill that umpires have to have, and not even players have that. So it's a very, very tough thing. And knowing that the younger umpires coming into the league are struggling to learn that skill, it makes sense that they're taking it out. We need to make the pool of umpires bigger. That is another thing that Swan had mentioned. The other thing that we think that will help in that space is it's a skill. You have to put a fair bit of time into practicing it. What we'd rather do is have the umpires putting their skills into making the correct decisions. So yeah, more emphasis on the idea that it is one action throughout the game, but there's a fair bit of thinking, a fair bit of physicality to it that most umpires in any other sport at any other league really doesn't have to deal with. So there's that one, and I think it's on the right track. I really don't see a problem with it, other than maybe traditional football fans thinking it's stripping back the game further and further. We'll get this old nostalgia debate, 5 to 10 years from now about how we should bring the centre bounce back, when really it was never that good. That's usually the way nostalgia goes. You look at it with rose-tinted glasses. I'd like to think we're smart enough to know that the centre bounce can be scrapped and the game will be better off for it, but I guarantee you, 5 to 10 years' time, someone will be like, I miss when they bounced the ball in the centre bounce. It'll be a nice bit of pub trivia before you know it, so we'll find out sooner or later how that goes. But the sub rule, that has been eliminated too. There's a few interesting butterfly effects that come with the sub rule being eliminated. Not just the fact that now on game day, your team goes from 22 to 23 listed players on the field, but that also goes with the All-Australian team. So now there's going to be an extra player recognised within the All-Australian team, which I think is great. I don't think it delegitimizes that extra player who makes it, because realistically, 23 is still a really, really hard group to crack. There's still going to be the snubs and the ones that you wish could have made it who aren't going to make it. But at the end of the day, it's one extra person who gets to put on their resume that they made the All-Australian team. And I think considering it's only one extra player, I don't see anything bad about it. It just means one extra player gets recognised. It even may bump up their paychecks. We don't know. But nonetheless, it is a butterfly effect that I don't think many people thought about when thinking about the sub rule going, is that now 23 players are going to be getting themselves in the All-Australian team. But yeah, I think the most notable reason as to why the sub rule has been brought up, at least at this period of time, is because of the grand final when Chris Scott struggled to make the decision as to whether he took out Jeremy Cameron. I think they would have known in the moment that he'd broken his arm, and you could tell he was not all right from every single moment after the injury occurred. Thankfully, that tackle on Jasper Fletcher was a fantastic little moment in the grand final. That shows just how courageous and how strong and how brave Jeremy Cameron is as a player. But yeah, in terms of tactical changes, Chris Scott couldn't make that sub with confidence because of how solid of a player Jeremy Cameron is. Going down to 3 as well is something that he had to work with, and it's tough trying to outrun a team when you're using one less rotation on the field. And maybe you saw that come with Lachie Neale absolutely smashing it out of the gate. But with the sub rule being eliminated, it means that even if a player goes down, you've still got 4 rotations. There may even come up with the argument that now if you lose someone, you've got only 4 instead of 5. But I think 4 is enough to make consistent rotations. It's shown to be more than fine with the AFL, and they've kind of enjoyed having four rotations over time. They've been okay with that. It's just purely the sub, because they don't want to take a player out without the ability to put them back in. And yeah, it's been something that Chris Scott has run amok about. I'd say run amok is a bit over the top, but more the fact he has mentioned that he doesn't like the sub rule and is happy to be at the end of it. But the AFL had pointed out that almost all 18 clubs in the AFL had mentioned their dissatisfaction with the sub rule at some point. So this is probably a long time coming, a change that should have happened, but it's the only change. So they won't be changing anything around it, including the amount of substitutions made in a game and the freedom to substitute who they want. So Obviously, it opens up more freedom now with having 5 players and you can freely sub all of them. But I mentioned the freedom to substitute who they want because, some people may think that some players can't be subbed now or more players can be subbed or whatever it may be. No, it is more just the idea that there's more options now for rotations. And so it'll be interesting to see how teams adapt to it because now most likely you will see rotation numbers hitting closer and closer to 75 more often. And it makes me think, if you remember, I think a year or two ago, North versus Sydney, when North got done for too many subs or too many rotations in a game, and they had the game lost at that point, I wonder how many we'll see next year, because I don't know if it's going to be a learning curve. I'm sure clubs will be smart enough to know how to adjust their game plans as to make sure their rotations don't go over that significant amount, but it'll be interesting to see who, I guess, fumbles it first. We'll find out sooner or later, but I think both positive changes, and I don't have an opinion on that out of bounds rule. That's been in the SANFL and the AFLW, the last disposal out of bounds rule. Not sure how it works. I have watched a bit of the AFLW, but I still can't wrap my head around it. My thinking is if it's tapped out of bounds, then the throw-in occurs, but if it's kicked or hand-passed out of bounds, then it goes to the other team. That's what I think it is off the top of my head. I'm going to look into it a bit more as the off-season keeps going. But once again, cheers to you guys for watching through this one. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you're thinking. I appreciate you all for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.